They say John the 23rd convened Vatican II to make the church more relevant to the modern world. But does history back this up? With our cities in chaos, our children trafficked as sex slaves, and Christianity in global decline, are we better off today than on October 11th, 1962? Tonight, a look back at the most world-changing event in modern times, Vatican II and the fall of the Catholic Church. We talk an awful lot about Vatican II, but how many people really, especially younger people now, how many really even understand what it was? You know, it's.
I have no concept.
I really can think of no event. People don't even talk about Woodstock anymore and the old hippie movement. Oh, it's done, it's over, it's the past, you know. Mm-hmm. I can think of no other event, certainly in the 20th century, that has been more discussed and debated and, you know, argued about than the Second Vatican Council. All the council fathers now are dead. Even the advisors, what they called parity, even most of them have passed away, including then Father Joseph Ratzinger. So everything about Vatican II, as far as an historical event now, the people, the players, is gone. It's part of history, all gone. But the event is not only impacting Catholics, it is still impacting every man, woman, and child on the face of the earth today. It's pretty incredible. And what we want to talk about tonight is why. Why is this? What exactly happened at Vatican II? It's all the talk right now of Rome. We got the Synod coming up, right? We're going to hear a lot about Vatican II then. Pope Francis, in fact, is canceling, as we've talked about so many times down here, he's canceling the Latin Mass because, according to him, traditionalists are not fully on board with Vatican II, whatever that means. But I'll tell you what, even if that's true, let's give it for a second that that's true. We're not fully on board with Vatican II. Personally, I subscribe to the notion that traditionalists accept far more of Vatican II than just about every Novus Ordo priest under the age of 50 today. Much more of Vatican II than Jimmy Martin and all these wild men, you know, the crazy folks out there claiming to be Catholic. Much more than they do. Whatever is orthodox, whatever is a reiteration of previous church teaching at Vatican II, we absolutely embrace it because then it's doctrinally binding and you must accept it. So whatever must be accepted in Vatican II, we fully accept. And we always ask people, what is it about that? What is doctrinally binding about the novelties of Vatican II that one must subscribe to in the pain of mortal sin or ceasing to be a Catholic? There is no such thing, right? You don't have to, in order to save your immortal soul, you don't have to accept ecumenism or dialogue or whatever the buzzword of the day is, right? So even if it's true that we don't accept enough of Vatican II, why does it still matter? And here's the big question. Does anybody out there think that the church is better off today because of Vatican II? Do any of you go to bed at night and say your rosary and say your prayers and say, thank you, Lord, for Vatican II, because, wow, without Vatican II, we wouldn't be fill in the blank. What? We wouldn't have all our churches closed? The priesthood would not be a gay profession? All the Catholic school system would be gone, right? What? What exactly is it? Where's the benefit that causes even some of the best bishops and cardinals in the church today to premise everything, but it's very important that we accept Vatican II? Why? Think about that. Even if you think Vatican II is utterly beyond reproach, that it was completely orthodox, and that even though he didn't find it, let's say Benedict had found this the elusive hermeneutic of continuity between Vatican II and what the church previously taught. Even if you believe that it does exist, that everything's fine. And if you think all that's true, the question still remains. Did Vatican II do what it set out to accomplish? Was it successful? Did it help the church become more relevant to the modern world? Remember? Pope John the 23rd threw open the windows, you know, so we could be more relevant, let in the air, the springtime, let in the Holy Ghost, right? Did it work? Did it happen? Because the circumstantial evidence supporting that claim that it worked, that it was a massive success, well, it isn't great. And the poor apologists for Vatican II are left with this ridiculous position of, well, you know, after every council, it took a little while for the council to be implemented. And, you know, you got to unpack the bags. It's going to take a while. Number one, what was the issues that Vatican II was addressing? Does anybody know? What were the problems that the council was called to address? Because John the 23rd, when he opened the council, said everything was great. And he went after those naysayers, the prophets of doom, who say there's a problem in the church. He says in his opening address that there are no problems in the church that vitally need to be addressed by Vatican II. So we can count that one out. That's not what it is. So what are we waiting to unpack here? Don't know. All we know for sure is that since Vatican II, thousands of churches, Catholic churches, have closed their doors, right? There's a worldwide vocations crisis, to say nothing of a clerical sex crisis. Oh yeah, but that happened back before Vatican II. Yes, it did. Of course, there were always problems. The church was always human. We're not suggesting it wasn't. But things have gotten exponentially worse since November 1965, when the council closed. 80% of Catholics have stopped going to Sunday Mass. That's obligatory Mass on Sunday. 80%. And as far as the world, embracing the gospel since Vatican II, no, the world is abandoning the gospel altogether. Our cities have become war zones. Our schools are hotbeds of sexual perversion. The Christian family is dying under constant attack, and nobody lifts a finger to defend it in the church. Abortion, gay marriage, now we got pedophilia coming in, divorce, it's all rampant. Where's the church? Where's the voice of Mother Church?
I want to say to all of the Catholics in San Diego and Imperial counties that there is only one real pathway for us as a society out of the pandemic, and that is through the embracing of vaccinations.
Now, am I blaming Vatican II for everything that's gone wrong? No. Were there big problems in the church before Vatican II? Yes. St. Pius X, as we always say, was warning against modernist heretics at the heart and bosom of the church way back at the turn of the last century. Right? But according to every leading indicator, did Vatican II make the church, or the gospel for that matter, more relevant to the modern world? What do you think? If so, how so? What are you saying that we're not? Because an argument can certainly be made now that despite the very best intentions of the Council Fathers, and I am not suggesting that all of the Council Fathers were heretics and evil. They weren't. Many of them were good men. Archbishop Lefebvre, for Pete's sakes, was at the council. But despite the best intentions of the Council Fathers, Vatican II, so many argue, Vatican II backfired. It turned out to be a Trojan horse. It turned out to be the catalyst for the most cataclysmic crisis that the Catholic Church has suffered since the days of the Arian heresy in the 4th century. People are arguing that way, and it's difficult to argue against them now, against those arguments. And by the way, you don't exactly have to be a fire-breathing, rad-trad Catholic to see this.
The church is seeking to update and modernise, marry the spirit of the age. And the problem is when you do that, people don't know what the church stands for anymore. And at the moment, what we're seeing is a process of the church going woke, going broke financially, but also going broke spiritually.
Somebody this past week, we've actually done shows on this, but somebody once again sent a little video about Kensington in Philadelphia. Which apparently is going from bad to worse down there, those poor people. But they tweeted out this video, what's going on in Philadelphia, and they asked the question, what happened to Philadelphia? And when I retweeted it, my reply was, well, it's equity and inclusion. It's the demonic spirit of the world that has replaced Christianity, not only in Philly, but throughout the whole world. Philly used to be one of the most Catholic cities in America. Where's the Catholic voice in Kensington? They doing anything? Or are they just talking about going woke again? Or maybe equity and inclusion, some more of that? Diversity? That's working out pretty well so far.
People are using this to shoot drugs in. In the video I made, there was a guy who was going to the bathroom behind the steps. The roof's falling apart, the windows are broken, there was a fire inside. Can we tear this building down? Seeing it in this shape, is worse than not having it all. My mom and dad were married here. I was baptized here. It's kind of like seeing somebody you know on life support and they're not going to make it.
And this is happening throughout the whole world. The church has gone silent at best, or it's the source of massive scandal, to the point where people are just looking at the priesthood, they're looking at the pedophile scandal, fair or not, and they're saying, I'm out of here. I'm gone. Do you blame them?
It holds no more historical significance. If it does hold historical significance, why did we let it get in this way?
Where is the Catholic Church? They're just accompanying all of this, no matter what rot it is. We'll just accompany you someplace, they don't even know where. They're just going to accompany the pedophiles to hell? Is that it? And we need to get real serious about this, because there's another major watershed event in the workings, as you all know. There's a synod in Rome this coming October. A synod which, by the way, bills itself as completing the long process of implementing the decrees of Vatican II. Right? So it's very, very much connected to Vatican II. Well, the little problem is, if this particular synod goes as planned, it will be, according to one of the church's top theologians, the end of the Catholic Church.
You believe this synodal process is really, it's shaping up into a hostile takeover of the church, an attempt to destroy the church. Is that what you see here?
Yeah, if they will succeed, that will be the end of the Catholic Church.
Friends, how did the Catholic Church get to this point? Was she infiltrated, do you think? If so, by whom and when? Is it okay to ask these questions? Because the answer's pretty obvious as far as I'm concerned. I got a pretty good idea when it happened and by whom. But that's only because I'm a rad trad, so people aren't going to listen to us. That's because my father was fighting the spirit of Vatican II in this very newspaper back in 1967. Now, that's 2 years after the close of the council and 2 years before the new mass came out. And here I'm on the screen right now. Here's images, very flickering images, old images, video of my own confirmation back in 1976. When my father, who you also see on the screen right now, he's walking there next to Archbishop Lefebvre. Fairly interesting footage. Look at all those old cars. That's fantastic. But my father had invited the Archbishop to come to America to help us keep the faith, to help Catholics keep the faith. When? Well, in the immediate aftermath of the church's Woodstock, Vatican II. That was the level of chaos. I was just a little kid already aware that something monumental had happened to the church. In fact, that's me on the screen right now, the day that Archbishop Lefebvre confirmed me. So I remember, it's vague, but I remember specifically living through this. I remember what we lost. I remember what it is that we're fighting for. And again, immediately after a very specific moment in time, Vatican II. But I'm not supposed to connect those dots, am I? It was the sexual revolution. It was rock and roll. It was something else. It's never Vatican II. There's my, again on the screen, isn't this familiar scene to anybody my age? That beautiful old Monsignor there was a pastor when I was a kid, baptized all my 8 siblings. He was thrown out of his parish in 1969, 1970, right after Vatican II. Our parish was literally torn in half. It was one of those old-time parishes where everybody was Catholic. And so we ended up then in a far-off country church right after Vatican II, a bunch of little kids from all over the area who had kept the faith, the traditional Catholic faith, receiving the sacraments from one bishop who had resisted Vatican II. Again, there he is on the screen. Can you imagine what that was like? Only one bishop, with the help of one assistant bishop, Castro Mayor. That's two bishops who had stood up and resisted the spirit of Vatican II. So yeah, I'm pretty biased. I lived through it. I remember it well, admittedly. So I'm not even asking you to take my word for it tonight, that we need to look a little more seriously at Vatican II. What I want you to do, and we're going to devote the rest of our program to that tonight, so I say it's something a little different, maybe a little bit longer, but I think you're going to enjoy this. I hope you do, because when I watched it, I almost lost it. It's so beautiful and tragic and sad at the same time to see how beautiful the church was, how powerful the church was, and how somebody got in there and tore it all down. You know, who was that? What was it? Couldn't have been just a human entity. We're looking at a manifestation of the demonic, in my opinion, because as I say, many of the Council Fathers had no idea what was coming. And you can see that when you watch this documentary. So I want you to watch it. It's absolutely non-biased. It's a documentary done at the time. And take note of what your church used to be, friends. Take note of the beautiful thing, the pearl of great price, the awesome legacy that is yours, and how even the secular world reacted to the mighty Catholic Church because she cared about things that the world didn't care about, like saving souls, like feeding the hungry, and like clothing the naked, and doing all the spiritual and all the corporal works of mercy. Armies and armies of nuns and monks and priests all over the world going out to convert people, to bring them the light of Christ, right? The missionaries throughout the whole world. And they have the audacity to talk about the Church of Accompaniment over at their stupid synod. The liturgical majesty of the Catholic Church, her uncompromising doctrinal tradition, which the whole world knew about and which even mighty Hollywood had to bow to if they wanted to make any movies that made any money. That was the influence of the church, because she was not afraid to stand for Jesus Christ and for his law and order for his law, and to teach the people what Christ, what God expects of us. So she offered moral guidance that was the envy of the world. Everybody knew she was the moral authority. Despite some of her sinful men and women. Overall, she was a moral and spiritual and theological and liturgical powerhouse. And somebody said, the only way to tear it down is to go inside, infiltrate, and destroy it from within. To take that spiritual mission that defined her and throw it to the winds. Don't you look at this? Look at some of these images. And compare what you see. Just let it wash over you. Compare what you see, what you are as a Catholic, what we had, to what's going on today. There is no comparison. And I would invite you to keep in mind as we watch this, we'll put a little bit up here on the screen just to give you an idea or a little preview. But we're going to play the whole thing in a moment here. And I want you to keep in mind as you watch, this was right before, because this is towards the opening of the council. So it's right before the so-called Catacombs Pact. I hope some of you remember that show that we did. That was a fantastically successful show for obvious reasons. Catacombs Pact had been signed, where? Beneath the streets of Rome. When? During Vatican II. A bunch of powerful, liberal, leftist, South American mostly, council fathers got together. They were headed up by a radical leftist, a communist, a man who was accused of being a communist by the name of Bishop Helder Camara. And then they would later address this guy would later address the World Economic Forum in Davos. And these cardinals went down underneath the streets of the Catacombs de Attila, and they swore to tear down the Catholic Church. They swore to tear down all the pomp and circumstances, the liturgy, the titles such as Monsignor, etc., Pope, Holy Father, all of these things. They're going to tear it all down. Tear down the way she worshiped, the way the Catholic Church worshiped God, the way the Catholic Church defended the rights of God even in the modern world. And they swore to tear it all down under the guise of, you guessed it, setting up the Church of the Poor.
92-year-old Father Luigi Battazzi is the last known survivor of a secret pact that experts say may have influenced Pope Francis. Signed 50 years ago at the time of Vatican II by Catholic bishops in this underground church in Rome. Called the Pact of the Catacombs, it vowed to create a poor church for the poor, the same church Pope Francis says he wants today.
Which is like the biggest piece of fake news in the history of fake news. Total lie. Intended to control and eventually destroy the most powerful force of good in the world. And I'm talking about good for the souls, good for the bodies of the people of the world. Since the Catholic Church had invented the hospital system, go ahead and Google it. Invented the hospital system, invented the school system, invented the orphanages. What were the precursors to the soup kitchens, which the Catholic Church had been setting up for thousands of years with the monks and the monasteries? After Vatican II, Even the Catholic hospitals disappeared. I was born in St. Luke's Hospital. There were St. Luke's, St. John's, St. Joe's. They're all gone now. They're all changed. I think one is left, St. John's, and it's about as Catholic as Joe Biden. They had to destroy everything, you see? So everything you will see, friends, this following documentary, everything Catholic, everything magnificent, everything honorable, everything that was designed to give honor and glory to God, first and foremost, everything, was systematically torn down. It was eradicated. And then it was replaced. You're living right now through the replacement process. How do you like it so far? Pretty cool, huh? And the question is, why do they do this? And what are they replacing it with? And that's the part we can answer. Look around you. Look at the Catholic Church. It is a joke. And again, as I always say, I'm talking about in her human element, the divine element of the Church. Theology of the Church is perfect, spotless, inviolate. But the human element has been completely trashed. So let's put our heads together, right? As we get ready for this synod, which is going to be a disaster. Let's get our heads together. How about we put it this way? Let's finally answer the question that Pope Paul VI, the guy who closed the council, the one that he would later ask in 1975, his 1975 apostolic exhortation, Evangelii Nuntiandi. He's the one, by the way, who said the smoke of Satan had entered the church. He's the one that said we expected spring and instead winter happened. He was admitting that something had gone wrong to an extent, almost despite himself, even then. So in 1975, Paul VI asked the question, after the council, does the church, or does she not, find herself better equipped to proclaim the gospel? That's 10 years after Vatican II, and he's still wondering. Because you know what? Even by that point, it was obvious the church was collapsing. This wasn't a new springtime. This was the deadliest, darkest winter that had descended upon the world as the church, the lighthouse on the hill, as Paul Harvey called it, the lighthouse on the hill was going out, was put out, and the whole world ever since has been diabolically disoriented. So yeah, you already know what I think. You know that I agree with Cardinal Sunens, who famously said that Vatican II is the French Revolution in the Church, which marked the end of an epoch, the end of an age, said Sunens. Indeed it did. It also marked the end of a glorious and magnificent liturgical tradition of the Latin Rite, of which most in this audience are working to preserve and rebuild. God bless you all, and never give up. But it also marked the end, the council marked the end, even of things like the very idea of the Pope as monarch. Paul VI uncrowned himself right in the middle of, you guessed it, Vatican II. Vatican II was still going on. We're talking November 15th, 1964, when this happened.
Tempi. Il 13 ottobre 1964 Montini fa dono ai poveri della tiara. La consegna a Spillman, arcivescovo di...
What did that look like to you? That's pretty dramatic. Whether you think it's good or bad, it's something that we should be thinking about, right? What was that? What the heck was that?
At the head of the procession marched the guardians of the tiara, the symbol of the papacy.
Tempi. Il 13 ottobre 1964 Montini fa dono ai poveri della tiara.
What do you think? Is it okay for us to finally grow up a little bit and just ask the question, what was Vatican II really doing? What was happening there? What was that event? Nobody reads the 16 documents. I'm not talking about the 16 documents of Vatican II. Do you know anybody who's read them? That's not what this is about. As problematic as several of them are, what this is about is the event, the revolution, the spirit of Vatican II. So tonight I want you to decide, what was the actual council all about? Because you have popes that don't understand what it was about. You have Benedict XVI, as we pointed out so many times, talking about the fact that the council had been taken over, co-opted by the media and by other groups, that the real council hasn't even materialized yet. So what are we talking about when we say we must swear oaths of fidelity to Vatican II? Which Vatican II, the real one or the fake one? Benedict wasn't sure.
This council created many calamities, so many problems, so much misery in reality. Seminaries closed, convents closed, the liturgy was banalized, and the true council has struggled to materialize.
And I want to leave you then, before we play this documentary, with one Final question to consider as you watch this program. Is the world better off today because of the Second Vatican Council? That's all you got to think as you watch this. Is there any indicator that would suggest the church or the world or people in general are better off now than they were when the Catholic Church was strong, was real, was teaching the faith? And that's what I hope. I hope you'll be able to answer that question by the time you finish watching this. So let's just go back in time a little bit to that pivotal moment when the old world was about to fade away, hopefully not forever, but definitely to fade away, when the mighty Catholic Church was about to self-destruct, and when all hell was about to be unleashed on the world. Watch it and weep over what we've lost and what we must restore. Here, that's a documentary on Vatican II.
The apostles, Peter and Paul, passed through this street, the Appian Way, the one the Romans called the Queen of the Highways, on their way to Rome. Their words from the darkness of the catacombs to the sunlight of the basilicas revealed to the world the truths of the gospel.